Good morning, this is Barbara Kolm, Free Market Roadshow London stop here at the Enlightenment Institute, and I have the privilege to welcome Lord Hannan of Kingsclere with me. Thank you, Dan, if I may say so.
What a pleasure, Barbara. What a pleasure. We've been friends for a long time. It's always a pleasure to see you.
Indeed, and it's actually the third time that you speak at the Free Market Roadshow.
I think that's right.
But let me first get into things. You authored Inventing Liberty. And in this book, you mentioned the reinventing idea, the three precepts that define Western civilization. So what does define Western civilization, and have we lost that? Can we reverse that? Can we go back to it?
Civilization, as it would have been called until recently, because there was only one version of it, is overcoming the tribal impulse which is in our genes and elevating the individual over the collective. And this is a very difficult thing to do. It doesn't come naturally. And so we've done it through education and the Enlightenment, the scientific method, the idea that someone you don't like might still have useful things to tell you, the idea that truth is not handed down by priests or kings, but it is subject to experimentation and that you can change your opinions over time. All of this is very difficult. We are, you and I, are products of an education system that disguises how difficult that is for most people. And what's happened, I think, actually more or less since I wrote that book, it came out, I think, in 2012, and that I think was really the high point of these Enlightenment values. There are various ways of measuring the spread of freedom and democracy and the rule of law. There's a thing called the Democracy Index. There's the United Nations does one. The Economist Intelligence Unit does one. There's a Freedom House does one. There's all sorts of different metrics, but they all show the same thing, which is that at some point round about 2012, the 7 decades of.
So what can we do?
Okay, here are my 3 candidates as to why it's happened. What fits the timeline? What happened round about between 2010 and 2015? Candidate number 1 is the bailouts, the response to the global financial crisis. So for the first time in my life, a Marxist critique of capitalism seemed vindicated, because it really did appear to be the case that the rich were using the system to prop themselves up. Low and medium income families were expropriated through the tax system to rescue some very wealthy bankers and bondholders.
And then later with inflation, that was the consequence of the QE program.
Right. And a measure of authoritarianism always follows financial crises. It's different from a normal economic crisis. Candidate number 1. Candidate number 2 is the sheer increase in global mass migration, which has unsettled people. We're a tribal species, as I was saying. The idea of strangers moving without invitation into what we think of as our space unsettles people, unsettles how they vote. And this is something that is a product of increasing technology. You know, the big lie that we tell ourselves is, if there were enough economic development in Africa and the Middle East and South America, it wouldn't happen. Maybe if they eventually caught up with the US, it wouldn't happen. But in the meantime, as they get richer, they move more, because the smartphones and so on facilitate the journeys. So this is the other thing that is. But the third, and I'm increasingly convinced of this, is the shrunken attention spans, the propensity for conspiracy theories, and the general grumpiness and tribalism caused by smartphones. What really changed in 2012? Basically, everyone got smartphones in Western countries. And, you know, Jonathan Haidt, who we both know and who I regard as a great guru and a privilege to call him a friend, has written a book called The Anxious Generation about the impact of these phones on young people. I think, you know, why assume that it's only the young people? I think a lot of the conspiracy theories we see, the refusal to accept election results, the insistence on seeing your opponents as enemies, could not really have been there in a pre-Twitter age in the same way.
So we can do a lot about that. And, you know, we were talking this morning about Hayek and his acceptance speech when he was awarded the Nobel Prize 50 years ago, when he warned us about the pretense of knowledge in society and the arrogance of, you know, knowing everything.
Yes.
So shall we abolish?
Shall
we abolish iPhones and other tools?
I mean, first of all, you know, Hayek was prescient about that. I think it was Thomas Jefferson, more than 200 years ago, said we can sustain a democracy as long as we have an educated population. And for the first 2 centuries after he wrote that, people became more knowledgeable. But literacy spread, price of printing fell, then broadcasting began, then the internet. I wonder whether there's a point where you reach saturation, where more people are reading more words than ever before, but they've lost the ability to discriminate. They can't discern truth from falsehood. They don't apply the filters of consistency, common sense. Can this really be true? Weren't you saying the opposite 2 minutes ago? All of that seems to have gone into retreat. And I think that partly has to do with our education system. So look, you and I are not banners, are we? I mean, we don't ban things. However, when we are talking about children, in every philosophy, in every society, you have slightly different standards. I think that the case for keeping smartphones out of the hands of people with still very plastic minds, so kids up to and through puberty, when they are more vulnerable, I think that is an overwhelmingly strong argument. Now, even then, I wouldn't use the full force of coercive law, but I would like to see schools do this more, and I'd like to see parents, and I'm actually cautiously optimistic about this. My children range a lot in age. The eldest is 22, the youngest is 7, and I've seen a huge difference. 22-year-old, we had no idea really what kind of damage these could do, and her generation really became quite addicted. The 7-year-old, I see already that the mothers of the kids in his class are already WhatsApping each other saying, can we agree only to give them a phone that's nothing except a phone when the time comes? And I think that may happen.
That's very, very promising for the future. Well, Dan, thank you very much for taking your time.
Thank you, my dear Barbara.
I know you have to run again, and looking forward to seeing you again, and thanks for joining the Free Market Roadshow here in London.
Thank you so much.